Hey everyone, my name is Blake Green. I'm a cloud architect and AWS community builder. Today I'm going to walk through my favorite setup for deploying a full stack Next.js web application on AWS. I'll use SST for the infrastructure as code tool. We'll bootstrap the Next.js app with Kirimase. We'll use Drizzle ORM to talk to an Aurora Serverless for Postgres database in AWS. The reason why I really enjoy this setup is the developer experience is extremely productive, and being able to deploy and make changes quickly from my local machine has really been a game changer for me. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the code and get building. So the first thing is for the prerequisites. Obviously, you need to have an AWS account and your CLI configured, as well as the SST CLI, and then a package manager like npm or pnpm. And once you have those things, all you really need to do is create a next app. And so what I have here is just a vanilla Next.js application. It's using the create next app CLI, and then I've just opened it up in my favorite IDE. After you have the new project created, what we'll do is go to the terminal and initialize Kirimase. So all you need to do there is pnpm dlx Kirimase init. And this will walk you through some questions and setup for the configuration of Kirimase. So the first part here is selecting a component library. So we'll select shadcn UI. The ORM, we'll select Drizzle. For the DB type, we'll select Postgres. For the DB provider, we'll select PostgreSJS. For the authentication, I'm going to select Lucia. And for the miscellaneous packages, I'm just going to skip this for now because we can always add these later. So once that goes through the setup, you'll see it's adding a bunch of files and configuration to our Next.js application. And so we'll dive into that here in a second. But first, we need to initialize SST in our app as well. And so to do that, we'll just type in SST init. And what this will do is, similarly to Kirimase, it will recognize that it's already in a Next.js application. And so it'll just add the files that are necessary for us to be able to deploy the Next.js app on AWS. So I'll just hit continue. And this will do somewhat of the same thing where we'll end up with this SST config file. And here on line 12, you'll see it's just going to create a new Next.js web application. So we're not done just yet. We need to install a couple of dependencies in order for us to be able to work with our Aurora database in AWS. So let me go ahead and copy this over. We'll just install the AWS SDK or the client RDS, and then also the Argon packages here that we need in order for us to hash the passwords once we deploy. So I'll hit enter there. Awesome. And so the next thing that we need to do is just go to our package JSON. And you'll see what like Kirimase does out of the box, or the default configuration is it adds these DB scripts here to using DrizzleKit, for things like generating or pushing the schema changes and also like the studio. But what we'll do instead is we'll use the SST shell, which allows us to, have that a little bit of magic where we can access the database without needing any type of like bastion host or open security group, or even having it within a public subnet, right? So here I'm just going to update these DB scripts to mainly just use that SST shell command in front of them to be able to run those drizzle-kit commands on our Aurora database. So once we have that, the next step is we need to go back into our SST config file. Once I save this, and what we'll do here is we'll add a VPC resource, and then we'll add an RDS resource where we want to deploy that inside of the VPC. And then finally, we're just going to link the RDS resource with our new SST Nextjs web application. And what this does is by linking it, it gives us all the right permissions to be able to access the RDS instance from our Nextjs application. And you'll see that here. So the next part here, we need to configure our drizzle config.ts. So instead of using like environment variables for our DB credentials, kind of the beauty behind using something like SST to deploy our infrastructure is now we could just pass in these directly into our, so we'll just import that from SST like that. And we could just import these directly into our drizzle config from our SST config, right? So right here, we're just saying like for the DB credentials, the resource that we create with the RDS instance here is what we pass into the drizzle config to allow us to be able to access the database. So save that, and these will go away once we generate the SST types. So the next part is we just need to configure the client for Drizzle. And so if I go into source, lib, db, and index, what we'll do here is the same type of thing, but we'll just bring in that RDS data client and configure our Drizzle with that RDS client. And then likewise pass in the relevant config that will allow us to access the database. So I'll go ahead and save that. And finally, what we could do is go back down to our terminal and just type in SST dev. So what this will do is it's going to look at our SST config and go and deploy the VPC, the RDS, and our development version of our Nextjs application. This is going to take some time for the Postgres database to deploy, but I'll just pause here and come back once it's done. So once that has completed, deploying all of the resources for the VPC, RDS, and the Nextjs application, you'll see if we go down to web that it starts our Nextjs on localhost port 3000. And you can validate that by opening up your browser and go into localhost 3000. And Kiramase gives you this nice little landing page out of the box. But before we sign in or sign up for the app, let's go back over to our terminal and let's run our DB generate and migrate commands here. So pnpm run DB, we'll say generate first. Oops. Perfect. So you can see here that it generated a session table and a user table. And then once we, let's go ahead and do migrate and apply those tables to our Aurora database. Perfect. And now we could just validate real quick by running npm run db studio. And what this will do is it will open up a studio session to our database with Drizzle. So if I open this, you'll see our two tables here. So the session and user table. So right now we don't have anything in our database, but if we come back over to our localhost 3000 app and we click sign in and we'll click create an account and we'll say Blake at test.com. Doesn't really matter. We'll just say that. And we're in. So now we have successfully signed up for the application. And if we come back over into our Drizzle Studio and refresh, you can see now we have one, let me zoom in a little bit. We have one user in our user table, which is great. And if I come back over to the app, like again, Kirmase sets all this up out of the box for us, which is really nice. So there's like a home, it comes with a dark theme and a light theme, and the dashboard just kind of gives you a stringified output of your like user information here. You can also go here and update your name, say Blake, and update. And now it gives you this nice little thing down at the bottom, as well as like if I come back over here, you can see now that the name is Blake. So if I sign out and sign back in at this.com, oops, probably did that wrong. Perfect. All right, so we're not done there. I'm gonna open up another tab or another terminal session here. And let's say we want to add another view model and controller for our Nextjs app. So with Kirmase, we can do Kirmase generate. And again, similarly to like the initialization of Kirmase, it'll ask you like a few questions. So if you do the whole, select all of these here, we can select server actions with optimistic UI. We'll select, you can't select API routes. I actually don't want to do that. And then the table name. So let's say, we'll say jokes. And then we can select the types of fields. So we'll select varchar. And this could just be like value. Hit no. We can include some metadata. And does this model belong to the user? Yes. Add a child model? No. Yes. Awesome. So again, you'll notice that Kirmase added a bunch more files to our application here. So if I come in to the app, and now you can see there's a jokes page here that it has generated the view, and the actions here, we'll see that sort of controller side of things of creating, reading, or updating, or deleting the jokes. Yeah, lots of cool stuff here. So if I come back over into our app and we can refresh it, we can see here there's the jokes entity here. So we need to do another pnpm generate, and then now we've added the jokes table, and then we can apply that to our Aurora database. And now once we run our dev server again, and we'll go back to our localhost 3000. Perfect. Now we can see we have jokes. So add a new joke and we can say, what do you call fake spaghetti? And impasta. Create. And now you can see it's doing like the optimistic UI, and it creates that joke for us. And again, just to validate, we still have our Drizzle Studio running here. So if I refresh this and look at the jokes, now I can see there's one joke in here and it's been created by my user ID. So pretty cool. So once we have it working locally, what I like to do now is just cancel our development server. And all we have to do is do SST deploy. And this will actually give us a public endpoint for accessing that exact same local development. So it will actually bundle up our Nextjs front-end application and deploy it to a CloudFront S3 and all the sort of the components that go into the Open Next project to host our front end. But since we've already linked the Nextjs resource with our RDS instance, it will already have the permissions it needs in order to talk to our database. So once this deploys, we'll be able to log into our CloudFront distribution and be able to access the jokes that we created. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here while this deploys, and we'll come back after it's done. Okay, so finally that deployed the CloudFront distribution. So if I click on the link here, we should be able to see the same landing page that we had on our development environment. And if I click sign in and use the same username and password and click sign in, you'll see I was able to access the same account here. And if I go to jokes, we should see, what do you call fake spaghetti and impasta? Awesome. So that's more or less my current setup for deploying a full stack web application on AWS using SST. So it's really been a amazing experience for that local development, and then being able to just run SST deploy and have it deploy all the necessary infrastructure to host my full stack application. And then as well as like Kirimase, being able to, bootstrap a lot of boilerplate code that I would have to write otherwise. And between those two things, it's been a great experience so far. So just thought I'd share it, and let me know what you guys think. And if there's anything better or something I missed, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. But with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.